record.
Shavua Tov.
Okay. Shavua Tov to everybody. Okay. We are Ezra, Perek Daled, chapter 4. And we're going to pick it up now at Pasuk Tet Vav, number 15. Where we left off last week, we're in the middle of reading a letter that was being sent to the king to basically tattletale and say, hey, those lousy Jews, they're building something there. They're not allowed to do this. This is terrible. And if they do continue building, that the taxes won't get paid, the poll taxes won't get paid, nothing's going to happen properly, and you better do something about it. And we have about 2 more psukim left in reading the letter that goes to the king. And now we'll start with that. Like I say, pasuk Tetvav, number 15. Let me just get something set up here on my screen. Okay. Tetvav. Divakar bisfar dachanaya diavatach. So they suggest to the king, what you should do is look in the Sefer Zichronot, in the book of records of your fathers, utahashkach bisfar dachanaya betinda, and you'll seek through it, you'll read through it, and you'll know the kiryata dach kirya marada, that this city is a rebellious city. Not only is it rebellious, umahanzak malkin medina, it's also harmful to kings and states. Remember, he's talking about Yerushalayim. And the city is filled with problems and arguments for all times. Kiryata dach hacharaft, and it's for this reason the city was destroyed. Now, interestingly enough, the statement isn't that far from true in some respects. Unfortunately, we know, and just take a look at Sefer Melachim, it was a very short window of time when we were a united people, and there have been for centuries problems, and it says for that reason the city was destroyed. And in one respect, that's also true. We know that the second Beit HaMikdash, not the first one, the second one that's in the process of being rebuilt now, is going to be destroyed eventually because of Sidat Chinam. The destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash does not appear in Tanakh, of course. So whereas the statement is true, the purpose, of course, is just to continue riling up the king. But next pasuk, Tet Zayin, number 16. Mohodi'in anachna lemalka. We want to give advice. We advise the king, Dihen kiryata dachtit b'nei, that if this city is rebuilt, v'shuraya yishtachlalun, and its walls are completed, l'kavel dena chalak ba'avar nahara lo itai lach. That if the city's rebuilt, the walls are completed, you're not going to have any part of this land beyond the river. This letter this is where the letter ends, and at that point we also see that the hatred, the anti-Semitism, there's no, they rely on calling it a hateful city, a spiteful city, a rebellious city. They're not going to pay their taxes and all. Interesting, their arguments. But I want to take a look at just read to you. So that Daviz, if you have it, it's fine. If not, I'm not putting it on the screen right now. On this pasuk, and pasuk Tet Zayin, where it says, "Lekovel dina chalak ba'avar nahara." I'm going to read the Mitzudat David, it's just a line and a half. It says, "Bavur zot," because of this, because of them being rebellious, being problem filled with strife, not paying taxes. You have no and will not have any part of the land as beyond the river. Because they all will, in fact, rebel against you. Just a second. Let me take. Yes, I have a hand raised. Let me take you off of mute. You have a question, Robin? No? You can unmute yourself if you want. I'll mute you. No? Okay. That was just an accident. If you had something, feel free to raise your hand again. And he says that Everyone's going to rebel against you. Because of this. Or the Jews are going to get stronger. And they're going to take over. They're going to become the leaders. If you look at the beginning of Sefer Shemot, I know we just finished it, but if you go back to the beginning of Sefer Shemot, and the Bnei Yisrael, Paro said, his advisor said that Hine Am Yatsa, that here you have this people that are, sorry, it's wrong citation. He says that they're afraid. And right, it says that we should be smart because maybe if we get attacked, they're going to join our enemy. They're going to come against us. It's the same theme that comes through history, that the Jews are going to rebel. The Jews are going to go against us. Now, I'll tell you an interesting historical piece of information that you may or may not be aware of. If you look in Talmud Bavli, you will see that there are many, many Masechtot near the end of Talmud Bavli that deal with Kodshim, Chulin, you name it, all kinds of Masechtot, Zvachim, Menachot, that deal with Korbanot. And when you look at Talmud Yerushalmi, zip. Almost absolutely nothing there from Kodshim. You'd think, of all places, that the Talmud Yerushalmi, that was mostly in Tveria, but it is named after Yerushalayim because of the importance of the city, that of all places, that's exactly where you would have a ton of stuff on Kodshim. You have about Korbanot and sacrifices and how to shech and all that stuff, and not necessarily in Bavli. And even take it further, they're living the Galut. Why are they writing about having Masechtot that have to do with the Beit HaMikdash? So it's a similar theme. When it was the Jews in Bavel, when they are, obviously this is centuries later, and in this story, they are looking to give some sense of hope, a future, that there was going to be a Beit HaMikdash and we're going to bring Korbanot. But the Jews living in Israel had to be very careful, because if there was talk in their Talmud about building Beit HaMikdash and bringing Korbanot, then whoever was in charge of the people at that time period of history would say, oh, they're going to rebel, they're going to take over, they're going to build a temple. Instead of the money going to the king, it's going to go. The same theme over and over and over throughout Jewish history. That's exactly what they're saying here. It's also what the Mitzudat David is expanding on. So that's the letter that goes to the king. So now we look at Pasuk Yud Zayin, number 17. I read as follows. Pidgama Shalach Malka. So the king sent back the following message. To whom? Al Rachum Be'eltem B'Shimshai Safra Ushar Kenvat Tahon Diyatvim B'Shamraim Ushar Avanara Shlam Uchet. He says he writes to Rachum, who was the commissioner, Shimshai was the scribe. We've seen these names already on the letter that went to the king, and all the rest of their cohorts who live in Shomron, and the rest of the province beyond the river. Shalom, greetings. What is Uchet? Now, there are different opinions. The Shalom and Uchet could mean also their names, or it's the greeting of a letter, which means, and now, here comes the body of the text, the body of the letter. Yud Chet, number 18. And I think I mentioned in the message today that this parak, Hey and Vav, are all going to be in Aramaic. Once we finish parak Vav, I may go back to and explain the background, why specifically. The letters make sense that they're in Aramaic, because it was the language, it was called lingua franca. It was the language of the people at that time. So therefore it's recorded such in Navi as well. But when we come to some of the other stuff in the parak, it's going to be kind of, it's not going to be, when we get to the next chapter, there's certain psukim that just straight through Aramaic have nothing to do with letters. So we'll talk about that. So let's take a look now at what the letter is. Yud Chet, 18. Nishtavana di shalachtun aliyana mefarish keri kadamai. The letter that you wrote me has been read to me and translated. It's been explained. Next pasuk, umini sim te'em, and in my order, I did do exactly what you said. I made a search. Uvakru v'hashkachu, it has been found, has been discovered. The kiryata dach, that this city, i.e. Yerushalayim, min yomat alma, al malkin mitnasa'a, has from the earliest of times has rebelled or risen against the kings. Umrad ve'eshtadur mit abedva. And that the rebellion and in other words, sedition have been filled in this city, meaning that, hey, you know what? You guys have something to what you're telling me. You were warning me. So as a result, he tells us more things. He continues telling what he read in the Sefer HaZichronot, in the book of the Chronicles, Kaf, number 20. Umalchin takifin havu al Yerushalem. There are many powerful kings that have ruled over Yerushalayim. V'shalitin b'chol avar nahara. And they also had authorities over the area of the province, the area beyond the river. Umida v'lo v'halach mityehev lahom. And tributes, poll taxes, land taxes were in fact paid to them, meaning historically that the Jews were participating in paying into the treasury of the king or whoever the monarch, whoever the leader was at the time over those centuries. Meaning, wait a second, you're telling me they've always been rebellious? True. You tell me they have participated? True. And if they continue doing what they're doing now, they're going to stop paying to the coffers. Also, it seemed true. And therefore, Pasuk Kaf Aleph 21. Let's look very carefully at one specific word in this Pasuk. First, let me read and translate. Ke'an simu te'em. I now issue, ke'an means now. Simu te'em, I issue an order, levatala guvraya ilach, to stop these men. The kiryata dach lotit b'nei, and the city shall not be rebuilt, ad mini ta'ama yit sam, until I give the order. Look at the Pasuk again. What does he say? He says, do not rebuild the city. If you ever sing Karibon Olam on Friday night, it's a piyut, if you're familiar with it. The word, and also the word, many words that many piyutim that you have, that you see, Brich Shemei is not a piyut, it's just from Zohar, but there are many words that you, even if you'd never learned Gemara, you'll have come across and be familiar with in Aramaic. Here you have a word in this pasuk that's very important, it's kiryata. Kiryata rather, means the city. Yerushalayim is also known as Kiryat Ne'emana. We see that in Eicha. And here it's saying specifically, do not rebuild the city. It doesn't say stop building the Beit HaMikdash. It's going to come into play a little bit later on when there's some more back and forth. But it does say, it seems to say that they're being warned not to build the city until the king says so. Right, so Michael just now messaged everyone, he's correct. Kaddish is in Aramaic as well. There's many things that are in Aramaic, and Halach Ma'anya. We have plenty of things in Aramit besides within Tanakh. Kaf Bet, number 22. So therefore, be careful. Do not be lax, don't waver on this. Because there could be tremendous amount of damage. Lahanzakat Malchin, to the kingdom. Remember, they're not. The king is not concerned about what may happen. Facts on the ground, a building being built for God, not God. Who cares? Bottom line is, how is it going to affect him in his treasury? That's the bottom line. Pasuk Kav Gimel. Okay, so that's the end of the letter from the king back to the people who are in charge, who had sent this letter originally to the king. This is the back and forth. So these are the two, what we call the correspondence between the people causing the rabble rousers, the anti-Semites, the Cossacks, whatever you want to refer to them as, in quotes, and the king's response to them. And he said, yep, let's put a stop order on that. And what happens next? Pasuk Kaf Gimel. Edayin min di parshegen nishtevana, when the text of the letter of the king, the Artaxasta Malka of King Artaxasta was read, Keri Kodam Rechum V'Shimshai Safa Uchnavtahon, when his letter was read to these people, to Rechum and Shimshai, the scribe and all their cohorts, Azalo B'Vehilu L'Yerushalem Al Yehudaya. What did they do? They rushed to Jerusalem, to the Jews, uvatilu himo, and they stopped them, be'edra v'chayil, with force. Here is, again, another classic anti-Semitic action. They come up with a pretext that the king is going to come up short in the coffers if the Jews are allowed to build this house. The king accepts this. And when he says this, that they have to be stopped, it's not like they say, oh, got it, gotcha, we're going to come and stop you now. What is the word here? It says bivihilu. It said that they're doing it in a rush. They ran to do this. They couldn't wait to cause a problem for the Jews and stop them. This last pasuk kaf dalad 24. Beidai, at that time, betelat avidat beit elaha. The work on the Beit HaMikdash, the house of Hashem, was stopped. Di Yerushalayim in Yerushalayim. V'havad batla ad shnat tartein lemalchut Dayavesh melech Paras, and was stopped until the second year of the reign of King Darius. Right? Remember, it talked. It was Daryavish, and this is the Daryavish of Persia. So when he became king is when the rebuilding was going to begin again. So I'm going to do a screen share and show you something interesting. At least I hope it is. This is a commentary from the Dat Sofrim on this last pasuk where it says, "And now betelat avidat beit halaha." Now he translates first of all in parentheses, "Az batla avodat beit Hashem," that the work on the house of God has been stopped. Tosefet zo. שהיא בוודאי מדברי עזרא ונחמיה, בוודאי באה לחדש משהו על האמור לפני כן, שביטלום בזרוע וחיל. This statement, which was not said by the king, it wasn't said by the Shimshai, it wasn't said by Rechum, this was added in there, was put in, there's a statement by Ezra or Nehemiah, was there to tell us something. It was said immediately after the Navi tells us that the work order, so to speak, or the work stoppage was done with force. The intent seems to be once they came there and forcibly stopped them from building, lo shavu sham, they didn't come back. You know, we would picture just without that pasuk he's telling us, we would picture that they would have come there to the job site. They would have stopped them. They may have cordoned it up with police crime tape, maybe posted a few thugs, and everyone would have to go home. The way he interprets it, and by the way, he's not the only one, is that this pasuk is telling us this was a one-off. They told them to stop. Maybe they beat up some Jews because it's what they did, and then they left. And it may have been possible to continue building. Even because they could have relied on the original declaration of Koresh to build, as was the way of the laws of the land of Persia, or the kings of Persia. Next slide. Even though the mastinim, the ones who were causing problems for the Jews, to say the least, could also take an action based on their command. What was their command? Command was tell them to stop, stand down. So there are competing issues here. On the one hand, there's this Hatzarat Koresh who was giving the Jews the permission to build. The other hand, now you have the next king is coming in there and telling him, no, Artach Shasta is telling him, stop. And the non-Jews had forcibly stopped them, but then they backed off. So in theory, the Jews could have continued building. If many people, if you don't read the Megillah carefully, you would think that the edict that went out, the second one, after the edict that said to kill all the Jews, that the edict was, okay, don't kill all the Jews. But that's not what it went out. It says, they were told they can defend themselves, they can do what they have to do. It was just two competing statements. One is kill the Jews, the other is that the Jews rise up and defend themselves. And here you have a similar thing, competing, contradictory or competing statements. Wait a minute. You just said that it could have gone on. This is, but it didn't. Why? Because people were weakened. Their drive, their excitement, they were weakened until the point, which is going to be the beginning of the next chapter, we'll get to in a moment, when the Nevi'im, we will see who, it was Chagai in Zechariah. Give them encouragement to rebuild and continue. Adom Shivim Shana Lechurban. So the Jews, in theory, if they had been smart and had not felt a sense of, oh well, we guess we can't do this, they could have continued building the Beit HaMikdash, and yet they did not. It's telling us that that's not the right word. It's not a sign, but it's a hint into something that's going on in the psyche of the people. Yes, Aryeh, and you have to unmute yourself.
Why didn't the Jews write their own letter saying, we're loyal subjects and we'll continue paying taxes?
Okay, so off the top, that's a great question. Off of the top of my head, answer would be that hatred for the Jew could have been, I don't know for a fact, could have been so pervasive that would have made it any difference. Why didn't they?
How would the Jews have known about this private conversation between the rabble-rousers and the king and his reply?
Yeah, it's also
which was up to the Jews.
Yeah, it's also true.
It's not like we had internet.
I think it's a good. I think it's a very good point. Let me think about that. But I think also Michael's saying is true that we don't necessarily know they knew the reason they were being stopped. It's possible, but I don't know for sure. But it's a very good point. Let me see if I can come up with some idea. I don't know. Yes.
Well, I'm confused. There's a letter here from the king. That's enough to stop things. So they couldn't continue until a new king came along, which was
right. But what was so what is he was told not to continue with? I'm glad you asked that. That's why I'm mentioning. If you go back to that pasuk, he specifically said not to continue building. What was it? The city. He didn't talk about the Beit HaMikdash. So theoretically, they could have continued, and they didn't. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look. What I want to do is to read through the next parak. Hold on one second. Let me do something here on my screen so I can get everything set up. I want to go through the next parak. It is like 20-something psukim, I think, right? No. Whatever it is. Parak, continue. Here. It is, it's only 17 psukim. What we're going to do is read through 17 psukim. I'm going to read and translate. I'm not going to give too much explanation other than just translating it. And then we're going to segue for a little bit into a topic of, as I mentioned in the message today, into the topic of the prophet Chagai. Okay, so let's take a look now at the next parak. So don't get bogged down right now by time frame, because this is going to be something we're going to have to come back and visit and revisit. Okay, like, is the next parak take place immediately after? Is it years later? Is it months later? Right now, let's not get into that discussion at all. So we're in chapter 5. I'm going to read through it now. Yes, I'll go through it slowly and translate. V'hit nabi, and I might point out a couple of things along the way, but I won't get into too much depth. V'hit nabi Chagai neviya, uzchaya bar ido neviyaya, al Yudaye divihud uVirushalem, mishum ela Yisrael alehon. Then the Nevi'im, Chagai the Navi, and Zechariah, who was the son of Ido. Now you'll notice it refers to Chagai in the singular. He was Navi, and Zechariah refers to him as Neviyaya, which is plural, means more than one Navi. We'll have to see why. They gave prophecy in Yehuda and Yerushalayim, and it was inspired by Hashem. Well, I mean, really, all Nevuah is inspired by Hashem. Bet, number 2, Bedaim, sorry. Then, Kamu Zerubbabel bar Shaltiel v'Yeshua bar Yotzadak. These individuals, Zerubbabel and Shaltiel and Yeshua, these are names we already saw in the last couple of chapters. V'Shariv milimivnei. They began to rebuild. Well, wait a second, wait. Hold on a second. What does that pasuk tell us? Go back to pasuk Aleph. They gave prophecy. What'd they do? And all of a sudden, pasuk Bet, they start building with the full support of the right. It says v'imhon niviyaya di'alaha misa'adain lehon. They start to rebuild with the full support of these Nevi'im. What do they tell them? Gimel. And I shouldn't say it's obvious, but the obvious answer is it's relegated to the book of Haggai and the book of Zechariah. We're going to talk about Haggai still, hopefully this evening. We'll see. Bezimna ata elehon tatnai pachat avar nahara. Right away, when that happened, the governor, remember Tatnai, who was the governor, the word pachat is the governor of. The pecha, pei, chet, hey, which is a position Nehemiah also ends up having. He's like the governor. He's the governor of the province beyond the river, which is where you're referring to this area where Beit HaMikdash is being rebuilt. What did he do? He, along with Ushtar Boznai, Uchvan Tahon, Ushtar Boznai, and his colleagues, his buddies, his friends, they said to them, Man sam lachom te'em baita denalibnei. Who gave you the order to build this house? And who allowed you, who's telling you it's okay to go ahead and furnish it? Dalit. No, they come again, forget timeline. It's right now, it's immaterial. We have to just get the facts in order. They start building. At the end of the last chapter, they start building. All these letters go back and forth. There's a stop order. They're forcibly stopped. The people leave. Both the Jews are not there now building. The non-Jews are not there causing them problems. And then into this mix, at some point, step Haggai and Zechariah. Evidently, they're telling him, go for it. Build the Beit HaMikdash. We're going to see about their words in a little bit. And then along comes the governor, along with some of his minions. And it says, yeah, whoa, what's going on here? Who told you can build? Next pasuk. Dalid. And then, we said to them, Ma'inun shemahat guvraya. Not only are they asking who gave you permission, now, you know, the expressions say we're taking names. They were literally taking names. Who are the names of the people who are building? Who is actually doing this? Because in theory, as was mentioned, remember, there was this edict from the king, you may not build. That is an executable offense because the king said, don't, and they are doing. So by taking names, he's basically would be sentencing them to death. But we have something on our side, they don't. Pasuk Hey 5. But Hashem watched over the elders of the Jewish people, and they were not stopped. While a report was sent to Daryavesh, and a letter was sent back in reply. So here we go again, that during this time period, in the last chapter, in Perek Dalet, there was a letter to the king and back. Now there's a letter to the king. You'll notice it's to Daryavesh, not Artaxerxes. And the letter came to him and back from him. Here's the letter that goes to the king. Pasuk Vav, number 6. Parshegen Igarta, the text of the letter, Dishlachti Tatnai Pachat Avar Nahara, that Tatnai, the governor of the area beyond the river, Ushtar Boznai Uchnavate, that Shtar Boznai and his buddies, Afarsak Yai, Div Avar Nahara, Al Daryavesh Malka, that the other officials all banded together and they wrote this letter to the king Daryavesh. Zion, number 7. They sent a message to him. And this is what was written in it. This, by the way, this is actually pretty verbose because the letter was written. This is what was written in it. We'll have to see if there's any meaning, any deeper meaning to why there's all this. Chet. Oh, sorry, I didn't finish the pasuk. The Chinakti Gave was written in there. The Daryavesh, I love this. This pasuk is kind of, I really laughed when I read it. To Daryavesh Malka Shalama, to King Daryavesh, greetings, Chola. Chola is what we would say today, v'chule, like etc. Right? So they didn't even say, more than likely, the letter didn't say etc., but it does say that in the Navi. Meaning they actually would have said, the king, the masterful, the great, the wonderful, the grand Puba. Chet, number 8. Yedia leheve malamalka. It should be known to the king. That we went to the area, the province of Yehuda, to the house of the great God. Interestingly enough, they referred to Hashem as the great God, Elah Rabba. V'humit b'nei even galal. It is being rebuilt using stone, hewn stone. Ve'am mitsam bechut laya, and wood is being put into the walls. V'avita dach asparna mitavda umatzlach biadhom. And what's being done? The work is being done quickly, and it's going very well. Now, there's an interesting, what's it called? Juxtaposition in this pasuk. Look at it again. When they talk to the king, they're referring to Hashem, and they talk about Hashem as the house of God, as the Beit Elah Rabba, right? The house of the great God, not just Elah, but Elah Rabba. And then they also notice that not only is this work begun, but they're doing it quickly. It's going very well. There is this should maybe conjure up in your head an interesting similar instance that may or not, I thought about this when I was learning this. You may remember way back in Sefer Shmuel, when we're talking about David HaMelech bringing the Aron to what was going to become Ir David. And at first, with the whole story of Uzzah and Achio and the death, and David saying this is too powerful, we had to leave it. We left it in a field. They left the Aron in a field for a few months, and all of a sudden, the owner of the field, everything's growing, it's prosperous, everything's fantastic, and they took that as a sign that now it was time to take the Aron to Yerushalayim, so that the Aron. The presence of the Aron was given the owner Shefan Bracha. And in a sense, they're saying they may not necessarily want to be saying this, but they seem to be saying this almost against their will, that, hey, I don't know what to tell you, but things they're building here, and things are going really well too, i.e., parenthetically, wink, wink, their God seems to be on their side. Tet, number 9. Edayin, therefore, or thereupon, She'elna l'savaya ilech. We asked questions to the elders. Amarna kenema amarna lahom. Who gave you the orders to build? Very good. Aryeh says Hilltop Youth at Work in Pasuk Tet. Very good. I like that. We're actually going to see when we talk about Chagai, if we talk about him tonight, that he is in a sense the precursor to the Aliyah movement, the Mizrahi movement, Rav Kook. You'll see why I say that. So I think it was very on point to say the Hilltop Youth. Very good. And when you join them, I guess it's not that much of a youth, huh? Tet, again. Therefore, we ask the elders, who told you that you can build? Who issued the orders? Who gave you the orders and who allowed you to rebuild this house and all of its the stuff inside of it? Pasuk Yud 10. We also asked them to give us names so we could write them down. So we could write down the names of the leaders for your information. Again, this is the idea of the Malshimim. These are the talebearers that are reporting to the king. Hey, teacher, you didn't give us homework. You didn't give us homework. And their intention, of course, is to have these people executed. Yud Aleph. This is what they answered us. Now, again, this is still the letter that's been sent to Daryavesh, the report of this discussion between the non-Jews and the Jews. And this is what they say that they were told. Anachna himo avdohi di Ela shmaya. We are the servants of God of heaven, va'ara, and earth. Uvanayin baita dehave benemi kadmatetena shnin sagian. And we are rebuilding the house that originally was built many years ago. Umelech Yisrael Rav, and a great king built it. Benaiv Shachalei. He built it and he completed, referring to, of course, Shlomo HaMelech. So in other words, all we're doing is we're just rebuilding that which was ours. There should be, in Hebrew, the word for echo is head, hey dalet. There should be some head in your head right now that when the Jews are told today, what are you doing on our land, right? Chan al Achmar and all the people in them, Yamach Shemam, and all the people are trying to help them from the UN and the EU and all them, Yamach Shemam, trying to establish new facts on the ground. What are you doing on our land? What are you building there for, you Jew? You're not, this isn't yours. And our response, of course, has always been, sometimes unfortunately not loud enough. This is our land. We've had it. You know, you guys, your people were made up in the '60s by some terrorist. Your whole people is a made-up peoplehood. And the idea, I'm not talking about Arabs, I'm talking about the quote, the P word, the Palestinians, lowercase p, that we go back to history. This was our land. And we go back to the time of the Tanakh, and we go back even later, more recent than the Tanakh, and the historical presence of Jews for many, many, many centuries and millennia. And what do they say? What's the things they state? What is the statement they make? The statement they make, of course, is that that we have been building this. We're only reconstituting that which was here before. And then they say and they acknowledge something very important. Pasuk Yud Bet number 12. Lahain mindi hargizu avatana le'ela shmaya. But our fathers, meaning our predecessors, our ancestors, made God of heaven angry. Yehavimo b'yad Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel, and he handed them, our ancestors, over to the Nebuchadnezzar, king of Bavel, Kasda'a, the Chaldean, Uvaita denasatre, and he destroyed this house. Ve'ama hagli leBavel, and he sent them into the galut, into exile. Baram, but they said, Bishnat chada leKoresh malka di Bavel, in the first year of Koresh, king of Bavel, Koresh malka sam te'em. He says, by the way, that they told us, and remember, this is the report to the king now, Dayavish, that Koresh, who came before you multiple years ago, he gave us permission to build this house. This, by the way, strengthens Aryeh's question of why didn't they say this also back then? We're going to talk about this. Yud Daled. And by the way, they're going to strengthen their claim to this letter. Again, the Jews are not writing this letter, but these are the quotes of what the Jews said when they were confronted of why they're doing what they're doing. And this is an amazing next step. And they say, in addition to that, also the silver and gold utensils from the great house of God, again, the Beit HaMikdash, who took away from the temple in Yerushalayim, and he brought them with him, and he brought them to his temple in Babylon, in Bavel. Then Koresh released those very same items. If you remember, just go back to Parak Aleph. He released them from the temple of Bavel. And he gave it to Sheshbatzar, who was made into the Pecha Sameh, who was made to become the governor. Now, if you remember, we talked about the idea that it uses the verb to take out 3 times in the very first, I think the first chapter, that when it says that Koresh took out the utensils, we talked about the fact that he not only took them out, but it was also distressed that it was not belonging to them, and it was relinquishing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're telling this now or had told this to the people who confronted the Jews, and now this letter is going to the king and telling them all these things. V'amarle, Tedvav, Ilmanaya, and he told them, this is again, they're saying to the king, don't lose sight of this. They're saying to the king, well, the Jews told them that the king Koresh told them, take these vessels, take these utensils, say Ezel achet himo, and put them into Behechala di Yerushalayim, in the temple in Yerushalayim, Uvet Alaha, in the house of God, Yitbnei Alatre, rebuild on its site. A Dayan Shesh Batzar Dech, that same Shesh Batzar then came. Ata Yahav Ushaya Divet Alaha Di Yerushalayim. He came and laid the foundations for the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. Umin Edyan Vad Kanan, and from then until now, Mit B'nei V'lashlim. It has been under construction, has not been completed. Final, at the end of the letter, Yud Zayin, and we're not going to see the response tonight. Yud Zayin 17. Uch'anhein al Malkatav. Now, if it pleases the king, Yit Bakar Bevet Ginzaya di Malkatama di Bevavel. Let the royal archives in Bavel be checked. If in fact such an order was issued by Koresh, to rebuild the house of God here in Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim, and then may you please, may the king respond to us, please, about this matter. Now, there is a halacha concept, which is called milta d'avidi legluye. If something can be eventually revealed. If I want to tell a lie, you're not sure I'm lying or not, right? If I say to you, I promise you that yesterday, well, today's Sunday, so it can't be yesterday. I promise you, Friday at noon, I was in the Makolet. I promise you. Now, that's an easy lie to discover, right? I'm not using a good example, but just it's a concept. It's called milta davidi leglui, something that can be discovered. How can it be discovered and checked on? You could go to Mickey. You could go and look at the receipts. I can show you my receipt to show you I'm not lying. I was there. Something, if I tell you that I was walking down the street on Hanevel and I saw Joe Schmo drive by, that's not necessarily milta davidi leglui. So here, this is very interesting because what they're doing, the Jews, that you have to think that the non-Jews that are sending this letter to the king have to be a little bit addled in the head to even, I mean, I understand why they're asking, but to say, oh, and you know what, check the records to really see if there is such an edict that the King Koresh put out, because this is a pretty gutsy move on the part of the Jews when they know that there's letters going back and forth and there is communication back to the king, that they should claim, oh, by the way, I'll tell you why we're doing this. We're doing it because we were given permission by King Koresh. What's going to happen, just a little bit of a preview of coming attractions, Bezrat Hashem for next Sunday. What we're going to do is, we're not going to look at the response. The response is the next chapter, is Parak Vav. What we're going to do is, because this chapter begins with Chagai, mentions Zechariah also, but mostly it's Chagai who's working in this chapter, and it ties into the book of Chagai, all 4 prakim. We're not going to read the book of Chagai. What I'm going to do next time, Bezrat Hashem, I thought I'd get to it tonight, is give you a little background on who he was, the little we know of him, and the message of Chagai, how he is kind of radically different from almost every other Navi, and what his position is here in Sefer Ezra. But that'll be Bezrat Hashem next Sunday night. In the meantime,
Rav Zev, there was just one comment I wanted to make about what you said earlier about the Arabs claiming, what are you doing here? It's not your land, etc., etc. Unfortunately, there are some Jews who say the same.
Oh yeah,
And I had this experience. Yeah. Wait, I had this experience in the army one time when I was called up. The first day, you have to go to the Afsana.
Hold on one second. What? I'm going to end the class, then we'll continue. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So don't hang up. Don't hang up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Shavua Tov to everybody, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bezrat Hashem. If you want to hang out, you can hang out as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't mind. Actually, I was hoping that